gonna start recording our video, and I'm gonna start my audio. We don't have to start quite yet, but
I'm gonna start mine too. Should I clap?
oh yeah, that clap actually is helpful. I guess. Well, it depends. Arjun, are you editing the way that we texted about, or are you editing?
I'm gonna edit that way, but I also will probably mix in the Zoom audio.
Okay.
And because I mean, especially for Brooks, which is sometimes on and off, like it's just helpful.
True. Yeah.
But I think I'm just gonna disregard the video. So if there's any like dead air or anything, I could just edit it out.
Okay. True. Well, yeah. That's my clap.
Okay. That's mine.
Nice.
Good stuff, you guys.
Okay.
The best one yet.
Killing it.
All right, y'all ready?
Sure.
Yeah.
Wait, are we gonna
ready
get
for
like? Are we gonna get like sad? Like I don't know that I
Yes.
can be funny.
Well,
That's why I have
like,
this at 6 p.m.
I think we can all agree at the very least, like the fact that his name is Dick Johnson is pretty hilarious, right?
Yes.
On that note,
Wait,
hello and welcome to the I'm Thinking of Watching Things podcast. This week we're thinking of watching Dick Johnson is Dead, the new Netflix documentary from acclaimed documentarian Kirsten Johnson. To give us some introductions, I'm going to ask y'all a question, which is, who is your favorite movie dad? Is that the one without, or favorite movie parent? Is that what we did? Favorite movie parent, we're going to start with Arjun.
Yeah, I've like a few good answers running through my head because I really like the dad from 8th grade. It's just like really endearing to me, but I have to go with the Indiana Jones's dad, Henry Jones, played by Sean Connery in the third Indiana Jones, who's just like, some reason the first thing that came to my mind when this question was asked. So yeah, I'm Arjun and Henry Jones Sr.
All right, give it. Wait, is Brooke frozen?
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
And she's gone.
Oh no.
Oh.
She'll be back, right?
She'll be back, I'm assuming. I'll keep an eye on the
We'll
text
see.
messages. We'll just keep recording. Alicia.
Okay, I am gonna go against my instinct to say "Call Me by Your Name," because I wrote a thesis on that movie. I don't need to talk about it anymore. But I'm gonna go with the dad in My Neighbor Totoro, because the way that he encourages his kids to like pursue their imaginations is just super sweet, and like, you know, basically the point of the film, and like kind of guiding them through their this ties with the theme today too, I guess, like guiding them through their coping with like the potential, like the possibility of their mom's death, basically her illness, and that's just kind of like an undercurrent throughout the whole thing. But he just like encourages them to be kids, which is nice.
Welcome back, Brooke.
Yeah.
To give you a little bit of adjustment time, we're going to shoot it to our special guest, Erik Wells, the film guy himself, the extraordinaire, the boy wonder, Erik Wells.
You're too kind. You're too kind.
Welcome to our show, first off, and second off, who's your
you.
favorite movie parent?
Yes, it's definitely more favorite than best, because I think objectively this guy is maybe not show the best parenting skills, but I'm gonna go with Holland March, Ryan Gosling's character from The Nice Guys. He's not a horrible dad, but he's not gonna win a medal for it either. You know, he's maybe it's almost like he's the kid in the relationship sometimes between him and his daughter, but it is a very fun dynamic that he and his daughter have in the movie, and the actress who plays his daughter, she does a really good job of holding her own with him. He's obviously a very gifted performer, but they really do a good job creating a fun relationship in that movie. So I have a very soft spot in my heart for that relationship.
That's been one of those movies that I've been wanting to revisit, because I wasn't a huge fan when I saw it in theaters for some reason, and I just literally don't remember the movie at all, so I need to revisit that one. Brooke, favorite movie parent?
Okay, I might I don't know what's up with my computer, and so I might drop out a few more times. Depending on if I have anything good to add, I might just drop off and just end it all.
No.
But you won't need me. It'll be a mystery what I think about this movie. But let's see, favorite movie dad. I'm gonna go with the cinematic classic National Treasure, and I'm gonna go with Patrick Henry Gates because he has a bowl of lemons so big that it just it makes me smile. He's just your go-to man if you need to commit a crime or you need to make lemonade. So yeah, that's my pick.
Nice. I'm gonna go with favorite movie parent and not dad. I'm gonna go with mom, and I'm gonna go with Brie Larson in Room. Because speaking of movies that just make me cry, that film really pierced me in multiple places where just tears flowed, and that doesn't happen super often when I watch movies. So the love she shows to her child in that just horrific set of circumstances is incredible. So I'm going to go with that. Connecting to what we're talking about, Dick Johnson is Dead, films about parents. We're going to just start it off with, what did you guys think of it? Surface level, like it, dislike it? What did you think?
I was honestly kind of dreading watching it. I knew it would be amazing. But I was dreading watching it at this point in my life. I feel like I was like, I could do this on maybe a different day or a couple months from now, maybe. But with my current, I can go into this later, and I'm sure everyone has their own kind of emotional context for this movie. But with my emotional context, I was not prepared. But at the same time, I watched it and I thought it was emotionally cleansing, even if it was very taxing on the emotions. I thought it was incredible and experimental in a very positive way that I appreciate for its risk taking and also for its frankness. So yeah, I really, really liked it, and I think she's amazing. And I am now, all I've seen by her is Citizen 4 so far. So now got a lot more on my watch list.
Arjun, I want you to go immediately after, from what we were talking about before the pod started.
Yeah, I didn't have that same kind of personal connection to it. I think we both agree there. And nevertheless, I cried my eyes out at this movie, and I think it was effective in a lot of ways. And we watched, I think a couple of us at least watched Camera Person 2 recently, which might give us a little bit of a new perspective, considering she's clearly such a personal filmmaker, or at least when she's behind the director's chair, she is. And I think just for that, it's hard not to respect what she's doing. But at the same time, I didn't really love the movie maybe as much as I was expecting to. Coming out of Sundance, everybody was lauding it, and I've had 8 months of just bubbling up and thinking about what this movie might be. And whereas I think the parts where we're actually dealing with Dick Johnson were incredibly effective, and like I said, I was fucking bawling at this movie. I didn't really like the constructed parts, I guess, as much, where the parts where she's getting, or he is getting, killed repeatedly in different ways just kind of didn't make a lot of sense to me. And then the part where he levitates up to heaven, I was just kind of conceptually a little bit put off, but overall just an incredibly effective film, I thought, and one that I've thought about so much since I watched it.
I have some similar quabbles isn't the right word, but questions about the construction and those I guess the premise of the movie. The way that they marketed it was that it's a daughter's gonna kill her father, and that's the documentary. And I have some questions about that, but I want to hear what Erik and Brooke think about the movie first.
I really like the movie. I just watched Camera Person today. I hadn't seen it before. I haven't seen any of the prior documentaries that she was a cinematographer on. But I really enjoyed is a difficult word because it's not like a super fun movie necessarily. I mean, we can kind of glean that from the title, but in certain ways it is. I think it's not necessarily as sad as you might assume. It's a very celebratory movie, I think, in a lot of ways, because it sort of starts from this place of he's had this whole life up to this point, but that's over now. He's not going to go back to work. He's not going to have that part of himself back. And so really all we can do is live in the present and try and make the most of that in the time that we have left. So I think it's a very celebratory movie. And there's clearly like a lot of love in it. And I think it helps that he's also just like a really engaging person to center a documentary about. Like, I think, a lot of people could make this sort of very personal story with good intentions, but it just doesn't come off as well if you don't have a really interesting figure at the center. And I think he's a very Dick Johnson, that is, he's a very charismatic person to listen to, and he's just really fun to watch, and he loves his daughter and his grandkids. And so it was just, I think, a really sweet love letter from a daughter to a father. And I actually enjoyed the more conceptual, like the fake death stuff a bit more than it seems like you guys might. And we can get into that later. I don't want to blow through all my notes right here in the beginning, but I think I had a more positive feeling towards those aspects of the movie than you guys might have.
Brooke.
Waiting to be called on by teacher. Yeah, I don't know if this is weird. Well, it is, but I'm one of those people that like snaps a selfie of myself if I'm crying for some reason. I don't know. I just think they're funny to look back in retrospect and like just swipe on through, see what I was doing that day. But yeah, this movie made me take a crying selfie. I was gonna send it to you guys, and then I was like, no, I'll save it. I'll save it for later in case anyone requests it. But yeah, it was really interesting. I think same as Alicia, like, and we can get into it later, but like facing somewhat recently my own parents' like mortality in certain ways. And I think like I don't know, I like talk about this a lot, but I'm an only child. And it like, I don't know, in some ways it like hits different knowing that like I will be probably the only person like responsible for my parents, you know what I mean? In like in a way that I think might be different from someone from like a really large family. But yeah, I like just thinking of myself and what I like in film. If you were to like tell me the premise and say that she does all these scenes where she like kills off her dad, or they're like the very elaborate like the heaven sequence or whatever, I would think that I would not like it, but I very much did like it. It was like a very touching personal like 1,000 ways to die like sort of situation. But I think I like in particular really liked the heaven sequence a lot. And we can like dive into that later. But yeah, overall, really good. Made me cry, made me laugh, made me like research nursing homes and what to do. But yeah, that's my take.
Well, let's dive into these fantasy sequences, because I think that's something that we all have an opinion on and are interested in. Well, before I went in, see, I was actually the opposite of Brooke. I was like, that sounds dope. Like give me some like crazy kill scenes and like almost like a horror movie. Like, this is such a weird premise for a documentary. I'm all in. Like, that sounds interesting. And then while watching it, it felt really forced to me. And I don't know if that's because I had seen Camera Person, which I watched Camera Person last week, and I immediately texted y'all and were like, somebody should watch this, because I just loved that. I fell in love with that movie. That movie like was so moving to me. Like, it felt like she was speaking to me personally somehow, even though that movie is just like a collection of like old archival footage, and yet it flows so effortlessly. So when I got to Dick Johnson is Dead, and it's these like elaborate staged deaths that are like sprinkled throughout and haven't seen it. It didn't feel natural. It just felt like, oh, she had to present something to producers so that she could get funding to have an excuse to make this film. But then I got to the funeral scene and I kind of changed my opinion of it, because that scene was particularly moving to me. The idea that she is going to host a funeral for her dad so that while he's alive, so that he can hear like how much people loved him and appreciated him and will miss him, hits so hard emotionally that I was like, okay, I'm fine with everything else. It justifies it to me, because she needed funding. She needed an excuse to make this documentary. Like she probably could have just pointed the camera at her dad and said like, all right, this is the documentary, but who knows if she would have gotten funding and how that would have gone. So giving her some sort of structure to then frame in all of the unfantasy sequences, I think actually ended up working for me, even if I didn't like it in the moment. But
yeah, that's a good point, is that my sequences that were my favorite ones were the funeral, the like weird trippy heaven sequence, and then the like Halloween one, which were all the ones that he wasn't really being like killed off in the like accidental death manner. And I especially like the Halloween one because it's just like a good kind of like imagery for like what he might be feeling in that moment. I think like a big part of this is like, right, like dementia, Alzheimer's, like memory loss and everything, and that like confusion. And I thought it was just like a good, like, I don't know, personification is not the word, but like a good, visual like example of like what it might feel like to be like lost inside your own mind and to like be kind of like in a horror movie situation. And with the funeral thing too, I think that's like actually a really awesome idea. What I got from that was like, I think she said like one of the things that she like hates most about this like dementia, where you kind of lose the person before you actually lose them, is like not being able to get like your parents' advice on stuff. And like on their funerals, like probably going to be one of the hardest things that you will like go through, and to not be able to kind of have him in like we're doing like a rehearsal of a funeral. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe that's a good idea. Maybe I should do that. And be like, Mom, Dad, any last advice for like how I should deal with your death? But yeah, so I guess I think those were the most powerful sequences, and maybe she could have done away with the more goofy ones too. But I understand that they were kind of for like comedic purposes as well.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you bring that up, because it does almost feel like it's a sort of gift to her dad in a way. And I think watching that was something that didn't really connect with me maybe the first time, just the thinking like, what exactly is he getting out of this? And like stuff that she brings up, even of, is this worth it? And that's why I think it's like almost essential. And I'm so glad you pushed me to watch Camera Person, because I think they're so linked in that way, where it's not just a gift to her dad, but it's also her working through these things and like giving a gift to herself, I think. And there's one thing in particular in Camera Person where she talks to a woman about sort of the burden that an artist takes on when they're dealing with such traumatic ideas. And Kirsten Johnson is clearly somebody who is like touched on so many traumatic and heavy ideas throughout her entire filmography. And I've only seen Citizen 4 and Fahrenheit 9/11, but watching Camera Person, it's clear it even goes much darker and much sadder than that. And just to think that this doing Dick Johnson is Dead is almost a way for her to deal with that kind of trauma and like deal with and process her own sort of grief in having to have told these stories throughout her career. I wish I'd had a chance to watch Dick Johnson is Dead for a second time after watching Camera Person, because I feel like I might have thought of it in a different way, as sort of her working through it and finding some sort of catharsis maybe in her filmmaking process, which is why I think Camera Person touched me a lot more, having seen it after I watched Dick Johnson is Dead, where it's so clearly a sort of singular vision from Kirsten Johnson. It really, really touched me in that way.
I think you're touching on like one of my favorite things about the film, which was the exploration of kind of the selfishness of coping with death or mortality of a loved one. Like, you're sad for them, but you're also inevitably sad for yourself. And like the premise of this movie, right? The killing off her dad thing is like a gimmick at its core. And I could see myself kind of in the same camp as Brooke, where like it's kind of a little like quirky and edgy, and like if it were done poorly, like I would really hate it. But I like that like the movie isn't that. The movie is about her trying to do that. And you can see it in the process kind of falling apart at the seams a little bit, even in the sense that her dad, like the fake blood is like uncomfortable for him, and his health just isn't at a level where like he can keep doing this sort of game with her, like acting out the scenes. He starts to get like his body and his mortality gets in the way. So I liked, you know, like I liked that it seemed to be transparent about the fact that that gimmick, she couldn't like hold it up, you know? And that it was very much like kind of for him, but also for her. And like, does she feel kind of guilty about that? And I think that like when I am trying to make art, like write scripts, I've been like struggling to write this script about like some of my family members for a while. And I constantly stop and start because of the guilt of like, is this selfish? Like, is this for me? Am I kind of glamorizing this and like sculpting it into something that I think makes my life somehow more appealing, or like, who is this for? So that was something I really connected with. And I liked, I guess, the messiness of that aspect. Yeah.
I think with the you know, yeah, like we've said, like you guys have said, the sort of stage deaths, that's kind of the gimmick, or like if you have one sentence to sort of explain what the movie's about to someone, that's kind of the tact that you're going to take, is, oh, it's this movie where this woman stages these fake deaths for her father who's dying. And so it is kind of gimmicky in a sense, but the sort of moment where it kind of came together for me and it sort of took on this deeper meaning was like about 2/3 of the way through. And there's the quote from Kirsten Johnson in the narration where she says, "Loving means facing the fear of losing each other," which I thought was just a really beautiful quote that kind of sums up the whole movie. And like, this is kind of her way of facing that fear. Like, it's almost exposure therapy in a way. Like, oh, you're afraid of snakes. You know, you're gonna touch a snake or whatever, you know, something like that. So she's afraid of losing her dad. Especially in a way very similar to the way she lost her mom. And with her mom, she talks about like, oh, I've been a professional camera person for 25 years, and most of the footage I have of my mom is from the end of her life when she wasn't really the person that I knew her as. And so she's wants to sort of face that fear with her dad and sort of alleviate some of the regrets that she has about not having more footage of her mom. And so she's sort of you know, staging these deaths almost in a way where it's like, once the real thing happens, it won't have as much power over her because she's already seen it happen. It's like, oh, well, I saw him fall down the stairs and I saw him get hit in the neck. And so it's kind of almost this therapeutic thing for her that we're seeing play out on screen. And so I get that it, you know, wasn't for everyone. I know that it kind of came across as gimmicky, but to me, I thought that was just a really interesting, once I looked at it through that lens, it sort of became more, I saw more of like the thematic reason for it, outside of it being a gimmick, was that it was her way of facing that fear and working through that issues. And it kind of reminded me of, I don't know if any of you guys have seen Stories We Tell, which is another documentary by Sarah Polley. But that also is sort of a documentary looking at the history of her family, and like some stuff comes to light about her family history. And that involves a lot of, it's home video footage mixed with recreations of events from her past. And so this is sort of a similar thing, but almost going in the opposite direction, where it's recreating, in a sense, stuff that hasn't happened yet. Like, she's reenacting his death before it even happens, because, you know, there's no point in living in the past. He's going to die soon, so you might as well embrace the time that you have left. So yeah, just once I saw it as more of a therapeutic thing and less of a gimmick, it really started to make a lot more sense to me.
I also definitely saw it as like a very kind of, even though it can seem gimmicky, like a genuine like depiction of like their relationship too, like as father daughter. And that, like, she mentions again and again that like he is like a very funny person, and that like clearly he's like game to do this, and like his whole personality is to kind of like take those, you know, like sad moments or whatever and turn them funny in a way that I think like she clearly, in some ways, even though she has regrets about like not filming her mom, it seems like her mom had like a totally different personality, and that it was something that she would not have done with her mother and with like, you know, her mother's progression of her disease as well. So I feel like that's also an explanation for why it just is like fun and gimmicky, was his personality too.
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely part of the beauty of it, is like you seeing the way that she's dealing with like his like pending mortality is like, yeah, has traces of him in the sense of humor, like the way that his motto seemed to be how good it is, you know, like you notice how he kept saying that every time he would literally just like sit down after walking for a long time and be like how good it is. And yeah, the fact that she is coping with death with a sense of humor is so clearly taken from him. You know, she asks that guy, I don't remember what this guy's job was, but she's like, what did you carry on from your father? Like what parts of him do you have in you? And then also like the way that she is dealing with death is so directly paralleled by the way that like her dad is talking to that stuntman, and the stuntman is like, oh yeah, a lot of stuntmen actually commit suicide. And the dad, Dick Johnson, was like, well, if you ever need a psychiatrist, like you got one right here. And I was like, oh my God. But like seeing the like father like daughter sort of thing there is definitely kind of touching.
Yeah, there's so much just raw love in this movie that I feel like we aren't privy to generally in film. Like it's either a narrative film where the love is constructed, no matter how touching or moving it is, it's still constructed, or it's a documentary and there's some sort of distance between the filmmaker and the subject. But here they're intertwined, and yeah, the throughout the entire film you feel this great, this like pure love that you cannot dispute, no matter what maybe qualms you have with the, or what some may have with the construction of it, of the fantasy sequences. Like you literally cannot deny how sweet their relationship is, and how, I guess, how moved I if somebody watched this and was like I wasn't moved at all, then it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, like you can have your opinion, like subjectively I understand this, but objectively you're wrong. Like
Yep.
Are you okay?
I think one of the things too that sort of shows, like you said, that sort of pure love that emanates throughout the movie is that you can really see the seams throughout the movie almost of where the premise of the movie is butting up against the execution of it. Like when she's filming her dad and she's talking about how they're going to sell his car, and he clearly is getting very emotional about this, and so she still films it, but she stops and she hugs him, and it's sort of this acknowledgement of like, maybe, like this is a tough decision, but it's a decision we had to make, and it's sort of her acknowledging that maybe she's pushing him a little too much. Same later on when they're filming the fake death, and he says that the fake blood is making him uncomfortable, and that it's more painful than when he had his heart attack. And there's this acknowledgement from her of like, okay, maybe I need to take a step back and sort of re-examine how I'm doing this or why I'm doing this. And so it makes it feel less artificial, because I think if you explain this movie to someone, you say, oh, it's a movie about it's directed by a woman whose dad was diagnosed with dementia, and now she's going to make him film a bunch of fake death scenarios, it might seem a little like exploitative almost to someone who's not familiar with her work and what she does. But moments like that sort of show, by acknowledging where it can get a little uncomfortable, there's no artifice there. You're sort of seeing her acknowledge that, okay, let's take a step back. Maybe this was one step too far. And I think you sort of see that that kind of thing in Camera Person too. Like there's a lot of shots where she's filming something and then she brushes aside a blade of grass so she can get a better shot, or just these things that you don't normally see in documentaries, but sort of acknowledging the constructed nature of it, which even though you're admitting that it's artificial, in a way it makes it more truthful because you're being honest about the fact that it's not entirely truthful. I don't know if that made sense, but
No, it does. I think Kirsten Johnson is particularly in tune with the construction of filmmaking, and in both of the ones she's directed, Camera Person and Dick Johnson is Dead, the amount of times that we see like someone adjusting a lens, or we literally watch the camera get the shot that we're about to see, she's shoving it in your face. She wants you to see it. Like the title sequences for both films. For Camera Person, I loved. I wrote down notes. There's so Camera Person, I forget if it's the first shot, but it might not be the first shot, but
it's the second, I think, because
okay.
Yeah, if it's the one I'm thinking of, it's the second.
The wide, so it's a wide landscape, and it's like, it looks like it's in a farmland of some sort, and it looks like it's raining in the background, and lightning hits, and it's this gorgeous lightning shot, and you hear Kirsten Johnson behind the camera go like this like gasp of like, oh my god, like I just captured that. And then she like sneezes because of like, I guess, everybody sneezes, and then she like sort of like freaks out and like grabs the camera a little bit, and it shakes a little bit, and then it returns back to this like pristine landscape image, and then it's like Camera Person. And like I love that shot, because it's like, what is more emblematic of that in filmmaking is like this like amazing moment that you've captured this beauty, and look at this like shot that normally you wouldn't have looked at and thought like, hey, I think there's a person behind the camera, and there's like, all this, and then she acknowledges it with all of those like intrusions onto the shot. And applying that to Dick Johnson is Dead, she's constantly cutting in and saying like, look at what I'm doing, like, look, here's me, my dad, here's here's our relationship, here's how it's playing out, here's how I'm capturing it playing out. And that, I think you're right, Erik, that does give it a truth, because you're no longer trying to pull the wool over the audience's eyes.
Or like even with her voiceover, like she even shows you like her like recording on her phone in her closet.
Some good audio quality for an iPhone.
And also with that, like she's in the closet recording herself, and then she comes out of the closet and her dad's outside, and she just gives him a hug. Something about that, like, yeah.
Well, I want to ask y'all about that final moment, because part of me, so at the end of this film, we get the title, or we see him get into an ambulance. It looks as though he's had a heart attack, and you can tell that this isn't a fake thing. This is, or maybe it wasn't a heart attack. Something has gone wrong, and he needs to be rushed to the hospital. And she gives a date too, so it's like, okay, this is different than these other fake things. Like, this is real. And then she goes into her closet. She's in the voiceover. She's giving like a sort of like a final voiceover, and she says like, Dick Johnson is dead. And then she walks out. She hugs her dad. He's not dead. And I felt two things in that moment. One was like elation, was like, oh my god, he's there. Like, yes, like hug him. Like, yes, I love him. I love their relationship. And then the other part of me was like, but you just, you really just twisted me there. And I didn't feel good about it, because you made me think that he was dead. And I know that that's like, for movies need to have drama and suspense and rising and falling action and whatever. But part of me was like, this documentary has been so damn genuine, and this part wasn't. And it like kind of made me mad. But I don't know if you guys had like similar different reactions, or if you had, what are y'all's takes?
I sort of read it as like I mean, yeah, in one sense it's manipulating the audience, but in another sense it's almost like she took the premise and was like, it's been funny until now, but like, is it really that funny? I don't know. And also kind of showing like even when you have that moment of elation, when you realize that he's not dead, afterwards I feel like the elation fades, and you realize how fleeting it is. Like, yeah, he's alive, but for now, like, and that's it. So I can completely see what you're saying, but I feel like enough faith in her, and I see that scene as like kind of large enough to be like taken in so many ways, which I appreciate. And yeah, not all of those ways are good, but yeah.
I think I don't know. My interpretation of it is that yes, it's a little bit of a cheat, as all I know is Dick Johnson is dead. Then she walks out of the closet, and clearly there is physical evidence to the contrary because he's still standing there. But then you think, oh well, maybe he died in between then and when the movie's released, and then they show the little credit card that says born 1932 dash, and there's no death date, and there's that moment of relief, like, oh, he's still out there, he's still kicking around. But then you think, so then wait a minute, she lied. But I also think that, you know, the film document that's going to last forever attributed to him. So there is going to come a point where even though his death was not depicted in the movie, and it won't happen until after the movie is released, or it hasn't happened yet at this when the movie is released, he will be dead at some point, and this movie will still be around after he's dead. And so it's not now, but it will be true at some point, like for people future. If she, you know, her kid's very young, they have not many memories of him. So if this is as much for them as it is for her, for him, they're gonna watch this in the future when he is dead. So it's stay alive, but it's going to become true. But by that same token, the second part of the phrase is, all I can say is long live Dick Johnson. So even though the movie is going to last after he's dead, the memory of him is still going to be alive. And you see that in the funeral scene too, where that woman says, as long as my memory is alive, the memory of him will live within me. So I think those, even though like literally grammatically they're contradictory, Dick Johnson is dead, long live Dick Johnson, they're very entwined with each other, because him dying does not mean that the memory of him will die. So it's a cheat, but I didn't mind it. I didn't feel stupid or anything. If anything, I felt relief at it, and it made me think more about what it meant by what she was saying.
Right. And I think like the two words I think we're bouncing around a little bit are like restraint and exploitation with regards to her filmmaking. And I think it's kind of a fine line, because so much of what she's doing dramatically and even like a little bit comedically is due to that restraint, like withholding information from us. And even like the way she, you know, uses her camera, I think is very like, uses a lot of restraint, but at the same time, you know, it can be a little bit exploitative, I think. And I did feel that a little bit the first time with the funeral scene, just sort of like seeing all of his friends up there, not really knowing what they're attuned to with regards to Dick Johnson's state of being alive or not, and sort of having that information withheld from us, it just kind of felt annoying to me. But you know, at the end of the day, like when you see Dick Johnson's reaction, when you see the sort of Veritas image of like the guy in the corner standing there just bawling, it's just, she is so effective at capturing these sort of raw emotions on camera that at a certain point it's just like, how can you really care when there's something so real at the basis of it?
Yeah, and that's what gets me, man, with this movie and with Kirsten Johnson generally, is that it's like you just said, like, oh, something this real, talking about a fake funeral scene, but it is real. Like it feels real. You get like, you get his friend Ray, I think is his name, Ray.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And he is just not handling it well. He's bawling, and you feel so bad for the guy, and you just want to be like, no, he's behind he's there. Like you just, but it's something that's so, yeah, I guess what we're saying, real, genuine. The emotion is just raw, and that's, I have like I don't know what it is about the raw emotion that makes me want to be like, no, like part of me is like, let's cover it with a sheen, which is exactly the opposite of what this movie wants to do. Like part of me wants to like go to Ray and be like, no, look, like he's literally right here, it's okay, this is not like, I guess what I'm getting here with this like sort of rambling thought that I'm having is that like that moment with Ray at one hand felt really real and genuine, and I felt it, and then the other hand I was like, is this elder abuse where we're forcing this guy to live through the death of his friend that hasn't even happened yet?
No.
But my interpretation was that they knew he was alive still at that point, right? Because we have that scene earlier in the movie where they show Dick getting into the coffin. So I don't know that it's
But he's still feeling it though. Like
that's true. He is feeling it. I would say it's more of a.
I'm assuming they all willingly agreed to partake in this funeral that isn't real. Like they weren't brought against their will, but it's like.
Well, Dick says like when he's watching, he's like, I think he forgot that it's not real, and I'm assuming that this guy, like, it's possible also has some form of dementia. Like, he easily could have, like, signed on to this knowing that it was fake and then forgetting once he's up there in the moment, which even someone without dementia might kind of do consciously or subconsciously. And also, like, I don't know. I think there's, a very clear, and Kirsten Johnson is super conscious of it, a very clear, I say clear, but murky ethical line there. And like, why do you guys think that we're not shown that moment of, like, we see Dick come through the door and he's greeted by everyone. Everyone's like kind of relieved to see him, like the facade is shattered and like they get to be with the guy that they love and everything. But we don't get to see him like hug Ray. We just see him crying in a corner. Like, I trust her enough to think that was a super deliberate choice. But I don't know what you guys think of that.
I mean, to give a very personal experience, I don't know. I mean, I think it's something that is not like as manipulative as it might seem. I mean, like, obviously very manipulative, as in they were like in a church and they, set up the camera and everything. But I think when someone is that sick, and especially with something like dementia, where it's a very slow process, like, it's a very natural thing to imagine your loved one's death, like, over and over without like being prompted to do so. And like, from a personal experience, totally different situation. But in my my high school speech writing class, we had to like write a speech that was an in memoriam. And I wrote one about my elderly dog, who had not yet died. And she went on for another like 3 more years. But like, I wrote one and just like about like how much she meant to me and everything. And like, definitely like teared up there. So I think even just like the process of, well, like for my dog, like seeing someone get older and seeing for Dick, like him slowly start to like not remember things is it's a very like painful process of like, I think Ray was okay, because I'm pretty sure he was like sitting next to Dick and was like having to remind him, wasn't that at one point, like, of what like major surgery he had? He was like, no, it was like bypass or whatever. I think that was him. But I think it's a very natural thing that would have happened had she not like filmed it, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't think it was that manipulative on her part.
I guess we brought it up earlier, but I did have throughout it, I was thinking like, oh, like, I know he said yes to this, but I also think that he would say yes to anything you say. And then she literally brings up the line like, yeah, like, he said yes, but he'd say yes to anything I say. And I think that I guess I'm being more critical than I actually am, or more than I feel, because in the end I was won over by the documentary pretty fully. So I guess that actually brings me to another question, which is like, can we even look at this critically and feel good about looking at it critically? Because it's almost like looking through like a family portrait and you're like, this is a bad picture if you're criticizing it, because it's so deeply personal. And I felt weird, even while watching it, I felt weird about like my film major brain being like, like, let me knock this down a star on Letterboxd or whatever the hell. Like, I don't know. Did y'all have any qualms about it being so deeply personal, and also thinking, hey, we have to film a podcast talking about it?
Well, I mean, I think it's the difference between like her putting on Netflix for our consumption and like us breaking into her house to like watch the video. So, you know, criticism was bound to happen.
Good point.
Yeah, and I think if it was more purely documentary and less, so much focus with more abstract and experimental ideas of filmmaking, and she's clearly, like you said, such a person and an artist who is interested in the history and the ideas of art that she is subverting in her work. So I think it's perfectly fair, as personal of a piece of art as it might be, because I mean, at the end of the day, I think all art is personal to a degree, whether it's this overtly personal or not. And I think that's honestly like a part of what Camera Person is about too. But I think just, putting it out there like that, I think opens it up to this kind of discussion, even though I don't think any of us are, or anybody really that I've read at all, is that negative about it, which is probably good.
No one was like, I wish he had died. I wish
Yeah, I feel like I have trouble answering that question, Caleb, because like that is kind of the point I've arrived at on film in general, not just movies like this. Like I've given up on criticism because I find it like personally kind of pointless, not for everyone, but for me. And I just have so much more fun and like find myself benefiting more from like the theoretical side of things, or just like picking something apart over and over again. And like, even if it's so blatantly clear that the director meant one thing, I will like force myself to pretend that it means something, or that it could mean like, an infinite number of things. So yeah, like I think that's definitely a good question. When it comes to like, there's no answer, but it's something we should keep talking about, I guess, with movies like this, but with movies in general.
Yeah, I feel like I need to break my, I don't know. I've been watching movies for too long, and I think that I'm now like I need to break my IMDb letterbox brain, where I'm like watching something and I'm like, oh, this is good. This is 3.5 stars. This is 4 star. And I know that y'all, pointing at Arjun and Alicia, don't rate things on Letterboxd, I don't think, and Brooke. And that's so smart. And I need to start doing that. But then everything else I've done is rated. So then it's like, some things are rated, some things are not rated, and that would.
Well, I'm a hypocrite because sometimes I'll just watch something really fucking good and I'm like 5 stars, or I'll watch like Grease and give it 5 stars. Like
I saw that. Three 5 stars, 3 reviews.
yeah.
This is the first movie I ever saw. I get it. Yeah.
I personally, I started doing that recently, actually, and I think I probably was a little bit inspired by you, Alicia, even though I think you started doing that like a year or more ago. But I just kind of wanted to challenge myself, honestly. I feel like the star ratings just kind of gave it a little bit of a scapegoat to make it easier on myself to not like think super critically about films sometimes, or not just like engage with the film, where I could just be like, oh, I like that. Like, I'll give it 3.5 stars, where it just kind of like forces me to actually, reckon with why I liked it and what worked a little bit. That was just my personal reasoning, where, I don't know, it's been hard and I already want to go back, but.
Yeah, the only reason I keep doing it, other than like my neuroses, is that I love like looking back and sorting through things and being like, all right, let me think about like, I don't know, Kubrick's filmography. Boom, there they are. And oh yeah, I did like those a lot. And oh yeah, like that one, like that helps me sort things. Or like for these letterbox questions, or not letterbox questions, these like opening questions that we've been doing for the podcast. It's like, okay, what's your favorite whatever? Boom, let me sort it by ones that I like, and then let me look through and like, oh yeah, that has a dad in it, like that, that helps.
So you just gotta make more lists.
Yeah.
There's a shit ton of tags.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think I've run out of questions because there aren't many. It's I think Arjun and I were chatting about it right before we started this recording this, which was like, how much is there to talk about other than like what we've talked about? I don't know. I guess we've talked about a lot already.
Well, I think one thought I had, and this is kind of the last thing I would have to say about this personally, is just the sort of, I mean, we've covered 4 films now, and 2 of them are very just like inextricably linked with the idea of death and like the existential fear of dying. And considering the year and the sort of trauma and themes that seem to be surrounding like the world as a whole right now, and I think back to 2019, which so many of the movies I loved in 2019 were movies about sort of like conspiracies and like distrust of the government. When I think about like The Irishman or Us or Parasite, and that seemed to be just like a theme that linked all of the great movies of the year in a way, where this year it seems to be like death and dying. And I just was curious what your guys' thoughts were about that. Like, obviously you couldn't prepare for what's going on in the world, but in the way that film so much of the time seems to reflect the world around us, it is fascinating. And I don't know why, but I think it is a really interesting sort of concept.
What other films are about death and dying this year? Remind me.
I'd have to go back to my films of the year. I was thinking about this earlier today, and I had the thought more fleshed out in my head.
I will say that this past week I had like a COVID scare where somebody I was with, multiple people I were with, all tested positive, and so I immediately like quarantined. And when I saw them, we were distanced and you'd assume taking the precautions, but yet multiple people in that group tested. So I was like scared and like having my own little like, what if I die? What if I'm the 0.2%? What, which is, I'm totally just overreacting. Obviously, I am testing negative, so we're all good. But
I can answer your question a little bit because it's kind of coming back to me now. Like, so I feel like the Five Bloods obviously was pretty linked to death and the death of a friend, and Palm Springs I felt like was pretty, in a more abstract way, related to death. I'm thinking of Ending Things, obviously, and the movie we're talking about today, obviously, and then The Old Guard, kind of like this big Netflix movie about invincibility and just like reckoning with death in a more sort of actiony, popcorny way. And like all of these movies that are like littering my top whatever of the year so far. And I know we haven't gotten to see a lot of the best movies, whether it's been because they've been pushed back or because they haven't come out yet. But like so many of these movies that I've loved this year, for better or worse, are the ones I think are the best, are just like existential in this kind of way that I can't really wrap my head around.
And like intrinsically linked to death and all those things is memory. And like, I'll make sure I don't mention Bart's here, but like I feel like like technology is there's a connection there, because like she said, she like Kirsten Johnson said, she didn't get any footage of her mom before her dementia got really bad, and she has no footage of her being like the brilliant person she once was. And this also reminds me of like my roommate and friend who was in the shower at the beginning of this podcast. Sorry if you could hear that. She once told me about like I think she was talking to her grandma after her grandpa died, and she said that it was hard not having anyone left who knew her when she was young, which is like one of the most devastating things I've ever heard. And I mean, that's what Coco is about, right? And I think that with like the digitization of everything and being able to like snap a picture or video at any time, there's like this great ability to like preserve people in life, but at the same time there's this like heavy responsibility. Like if you have the ability to, you have to be doing it. And I feel like I was fortunate enough to not really be that conscious of like not deal with death much until like high school, but since then some of my like older relatives have been dying. And I had like my grandma, I knew she had this incredible life. Like she had this kind of tragic life that made her kind of closed off as a person. And she was like, her mom was a picture bride and like came here from Japan, and she had like 10 siblings, and they grew up like working on strawberry farms. And then she was in an internment camp in Arizona as a kid. And I like knew that I needed to like film her, like somehow document her talking about this. And then like she started getting worse and worse in her health, and my mom was like pushing me. She was like, you need to do this because time is running out. And then one day, like finally, I just like sat down on a couch with her at her home and like filmed her talking. And then like a year later she died. And then a few years later I was like going to my great aunt's birthday party, her 90th birthday party here in California. And this is my grandma's sister, my auntie Sue. And we were at her house, and I filmed her because I was like, I've learned my lesson. Like, I want to get this down. Like, she has, you know, a whole other side of the story. And then the next day at her birthday party, her brother, my great uncle, died like in the middle of the party. Not at the party, but at like a medical facility nearby. And everyone was kind of like talking about it at the party. And I was like, the urgency of death is becoming so like prevalent in my life, and the responsibility to preserve life. And it's, yeah, again, that question of like, what is selfish and what is selfless, and like, is preserving that memory for you or for them? And I guess in the end it's like for everyone. But yeah.
Damn.
Sorry.
No, that's real. That is where ultimately it's 1000% agree with you. Is that I can't see this and look at this and think it's selfish at all, because it's such a basic human instinct to want to remember someone you love, and for her to put in the time and the effort and the imagination and the creativity into literally immortalizing her father forever. And that's something special. And now, Alicia, you're making me just like, I gotta film this Thanksgiving. I gotta remember this Thanksgiving with my family. Like, I gotta do something with it.
Cheap $20 lav mic on Amazon, one of like the best things I ever purchased. I'm literally like, after watching this, I was like, I'm gonna go home and do the thing that I did with my grandma and my auntie Sue, but with like literally my sister who's 26, yeah. Like with every member of my family.
Well, that's yeah. And then you cut it together, and then you got a new Netflix doc, Alicia.
Oh boy.
Well, I think that's so interesting, because so much of, you know, wanting to capture these things is about like the legacy and like, what do you do next after that? And that's such another fascinating, unanswerable thing that I feel like has also been a part of like the films we've been watching and consuming this year, which is, you know, interesting. It's like, we think so much, and I think Dick Johnson is Dead is so focused on the now and like cherishing the moments. But then you think about like Big Time Adolescence, I think was the film, for example, or like The Invisible Man, or even Blow the Man Down, which I know you saw, Caleb. Like these films about dealing with what do you do next and how do you reconcile with the legacies and the memories of these people. It's such like an interesting flip side of that coin, and it just seems to be like surrounding everything right now. It's depressing, but it's such an interesting way to like reckon with these ideas that seem inescapable in real life and are also inescapable in art.
I'm glad that you pointed out Da 5 Bloods, because then it got me thinking about Chadwick Boseman and the way that film, I mean, maybe knowably, like maybe Spike Lee knew about it. I don't know how many people knew about it outside of Chadwick Boseman and his family, but the way that film immortalizes the character that he plays, and the like this, you know, we are going to uphold him because he was the best of us, and the love that within the confines of the film that those characters give Chadwick Boseman's character is extreme, and then you pull back, and then the love that therefore you give Chadwick Boseman, the man, is also just so touching. And it makes me just like single tear, like I love movies. Like that's the way that I feel like I can understand, like immortalizing someone. I think, you know, pictures can be around forever. If you took a clip of somebody, it can be around forever. But putting it in a movie that people see and it means something, you know, that's cinema, baby. That's what we do.
I don't know. I was just kind of thinking after you brought up that point, I was thinking about this in comparison with I'm thinking of ending things. And I think they both have the attitude towards death of like, and death and life, I guess, because they're flip sides of the same coin, but that we are survived by the people who remember us. But I'm thinking of Ending Things takes it in a much bleaker direction, which is we're survived by the people that remember us, but nobody remembers this guy to the point where he invented this whole, fantasy life for himself. So we all might as well just, follow the pig down the hallway to our death. And so it's very much about like this idea of embracing death. Whereas this movie, it's not about resisting death. Like this movie is very much it's about acknowledging and facing the fear of losing people, but it takes a more optimistic view of enjoy the time you have left. Don't let the fear and the acknowledgement of death consume you. Like you can still enjoy life without actively resisting death. Like you look at something like The Old Guard, which I admittedly I haven't seen, but other movies that sort of deal with this idea of immortality and resisting death. And in that way, by trying to resist death, you're still letting death win because it's consuming your thought, it's consuming your motivation and your thought process. It's just, instead of embracing death, you're resisting it. Whereas this movie almost takes like a middle ground between those two schools of thought, where you're not trying to resist death, you're not trying to embrace death, you're acknowledging that it's coming, but you're still living in the present moment and trying to make the most of the time that you have left, I think.
Yeah, and Kaufman and Johnson are both clearly such like personal filmmakers. I think you're exactly right. Like it so speaks to their different personal opinions on death, where Kaufman is just so, I mean, Brooke might have some arguments here, but so pessimistic and like, worried about what his legacy is going to be and like how people are going to remember him and the time that's sort of fleeting. Whereas Kirsten Johnson, it seems like, is more grasping the time that is left. And I don't know which one's better because I think they're both pretty fascinating works of art, but they're definitely clearly visions of their author in a really interesting and great way.
Alicia, you've had me thinking about the end of Dick Johnson is Dead, and now I think I love it.
Yes,
from what you said, because then what you said brought me like thinking about my favorite shot in Camera Person, which made me actually cry. And it Camera Person has so much tragedy and sadness in it, and that's not what I cried at. What I cried at was this single take. It's a boxer or a wrestler. No, boxer. Is it boxing or mixed martial arts? Okay, he's a boxer.
I think.
And
I think so. Yeah.
You see, like threaded throughout the film is he's like getting ready for this big fight, and he has this big fight and he loses. And it's one single take, like a Tarantino tracking shot of him coming out of the ring, steamed, so angry, punching things, shoving like water coolers down, coming into the locker room, just like furious. His like handlers are trying to calm him down, and he's just literally looking like he's like about to just go like deck someone and murder someone, and he's like, the camera's just like following him, and there's so much suspense being built because this is like a 2-minute, 3-minute long shot, and you're like, why is Kirsten Johnson showing me this? Is he gonna hurt someone? Like, what is about to happen? And he goes out into the crowd, and they're like trying to stop him, and he like goes around the gate, and then he goes up to his mom and just like embraces his mom. And the mom is like, you did your best out there. Like, you should have won that. I know it, baby. Don't worry. And he's just like kind of like crying in her arms. And I like, that moment made me like, just like cry. Like I was killed emotionally in that moment. And now that I think about it, like that shot of Dick Johnson is Dead at the end it's the same. It's the same idea of like, look at this intense emotion that this person is feeling, and look at how distressful it is to them, and now look at that person embrace love in their parent instead, and see how these two ideas can interact and mingle. And I love that shot. So thank you, Alicia.
Done my work.
Yeah, I love that shot from Camera Person too. And I don't know if anybody's seen Snake Eyes, the Brian De Palma film, but like there's a long tracking shot of Nick Cage also in a boxing arena, which is like about as dissimilar thematically as that movie could be. But it made me think of Camera Person when I was watching it. So highly recommend just go watch the first like 13 minutes of Snake Eyes, which is a continuous take of just like 13 minutes of Nick Cage going crazy in a boxing arena. Don't need to watch the rest of the movie, even though it's great. Just
I'm sold.
That's a good transition if we want to talk about what we've been watching the last week-ish since we last recorded, or since y'all last recorded Enola Holmes. I don't need to give my opinions on it because y'all matched everything I had to say, and I would have just been bullying Alicia more, but you guys already did. But what have you guys been watching? What's been good? Erik.
Let's see. Well, I mean, I've been watching a lot of stuff for class, but I would imagine you guys have seen a lot of those already, so I won't bore you with that. But some of the other stuff I've been watching, I caught up with The Handmaiden, which I've been wanting to see for a while, which it was fantastic. I loved it. I'm a sucker for movies with really good twists, so there were several moments where I was watching this with someone over like watch party, like the virtual thing, and so there were several moments where in the chat we were just like, oh shit. You just like uncut gems, Game 7 kind of reaction to the stuff that was going on. I really liked Plus One. I saw recently. Boys in the Band, also on Netflix. I would recommend. The whole ensemble is great. I binged through, well, not binge, there's only 26 episodes, but Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is on Netflix now, which is fantastic, and the wrap-up movie at the end of that is great. And then to just pivot a little bit, is not something I've been watching, but something I've been listening to, is the shirt that I'm wearing. It's the new album, Who is Hot Dog Water by Hot Dog Water. I would be remiss if I did not recommend that. It's folk meets punk meets David Bowie meets Johnny Greenwood. I would definitely recommend that if anyone's looking for a new artist to get into.
Isn't your friend Hot Dog Water?
I know people who are associated, but I can view it objectively as a consumer of media.
How much did you get paid for that ad?
Nothing, but I think if this movie has taught us anything, it's that you can be personally attached to a subject but still be objective about it. So I think I'm allowed to allowed to comment on this artist, even though I may or may not know them.
Okay.
Arjun, what have you been watching?
Yeah, I mean, there's three things that really stick out of my mind since the last time we all talked. I got to see Mad Max Fury Road on the big screen, which was incredible. Saw it at a drive-in, parked right in the front, blasted the speakers. It was awesome. They played like the black and white version for the first 10 minutes, and like I kind of wanted to see that, honestly, but they switched it and we got the full Technicolor for the full 2 hours. And also, just in the past 2 days, I watched Basic Instinct, which I'm not sure if it's a good movie, but like it might be like the best looking movie I've ever seen, and not just because Sharon Stone looks absolutely gorgeous in it and stuck in my mind, even though I think Michael Douglas is kind of ugly in the movie. And I rewatched Who is America, Borat on the mind. I'm not a huge Borat fan, but Who is America is like one of my favorite things that's come out in the past couple of years, and I think it is brilliant and funny and terrifying, and rewatching it was just kind of like I forgot so many things that happened during like the 3 hours of the entire runtime of that show, and it's mind-blowing, and I think it's perfect.
Watching Mad Max in a car, that's like man.
I should have been revving the engine a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm imagining you like sprayed with chrome.
the flame guitar and everything.
Alicia, what have you been watching?
Well, on Sunday I went to a drive-in too, and we saw E.T., and that was like a magical experience. That's like really the only way to, yeah, I mean, I bawled the whole time. Like I bawl every time I watch E.T., but like something about like on a kind of like cool California night in the car with like the windows open, watching that, like every time the music swelled, I was like, oh my God. But yeah, other than that, guys, it has not been a very artistic week for Alicia in film. I watched Grease and like Stick It, which is amazing. I will stand by it for the rest of my life. Gymnastics movie with Jeff Bridges as the coach, with good female characters, and and directed by a woman, I think. And then last night I watched Not Another Teen Movie. Rewatched, which I will also say is a masterpiece in its own right. And Chris Evans gives an award-worthy performance involving a male version of the whipped cream bikini from Varsity Blues and a banana. I won't say where it is, but yeah. Check it out. It's on Hulu.
You waiting for me to prompt you, Brooke?
Sure.
Brooke, what have you been watching?
Oh, there we go. My lead in. What did I do? It was my birthday this past Friday. Yes, thank you. I am now 22. So that happened. One time I forgot how old I was, and not recently, like maybe 2 years ago, I forgot how old I was, and I had to go to Facebook to check. So
I did that like a week ago.
See?
Oh my God. Yes.
See?
And then I was listening to NPR and someone said that they were 24, and I was like, thank God I'm not 24. And I was like, wait, like I'm turning something in December. Like, what am I turning? I couldn't remember if I was turning 23 or 24. And then I went on Facebook and it just told me like what my birthday was. It didn't tell me my age. So I like did the math and I was like, fuck, I'm about to turn 24. Anyway.
There's just too many. I lose track. But yeah, Facebook, the arbiter of truth. Anyways,
I'll be the first person ever to say that.
We just talked about Social Dilemma, guys.
Yeah.
We just talked about it.
I'm throwing it back to our previous pods. But because of that event happening in my life, my parents were visiting, and they go to bed at 8 p.m. and get up at 6 a.m. So I was on their schedule, which did not allow for much viewing, but we did start to watch Schitt's Creek together. Had never seen it, started a few episodes, on episode 3, decent so far. Not my favorite, but I don't know. I hear that like it got good in the last season or something, so just have to hang in there until then. But yeah, so that, and then I watched, my roommate and I are big into Halloween, decorated our apartment last night and watched Hocus Pocus. So another masterpiece. I think I might throw in a Halloween Town by the end of the week.
I did that a few days ago, and I would recommend, yes.
I also, continuing on the Halloween train, watched like a lot of horror stuff this past week. I watched Peeping Tom, which is like the British colorful version of Psycho. It's a wild movie, very weird movie, very strange movie. Destroyed what's his name's career, Michael Powell. Yeah, destroyed his career apparently because it was like the first British movie to like show female boobs, I guess. What other kind? I don't know. I was trying to think of the right way to say that, and I was gonna say breasts, and then
well, you did it.
It was always gonna be weird. So yeah, that movie destroyed his career, but it was a good movie, so worth watching. Then I watched Sleepaway Camp 2, which the Sleepaway Camp movies are my they're my, I don't know, what's the guilty pleasure. They're so bad, but they're so funny. They're also extremely problematic. Like any sort of like ism or phobia, like racism, it's definitely racist, definitely homophobic, absolutely sexist, 1000% transphobic. Like everything you can say about those movies, like they are, but they're also a delight to make fun
Got
of.
everything you want.
Yeah, and then I also watched The Thing, a rewatch of Thing, and that's classic, unbeatable.
The Among Us movie.
Oh yeah, the movie. I have not played Among Us. Have any of you guys played it? I just see memes about it.
I've been dabbling lately.
Dabbling.
I resisted learning what it was for a very long time until
I pretended to know what it was for a very long time.
I have to see like some sort of cultural reference pop up at least 8 times on my social media feed before I will go and Google what it is.
It's a good rule. Well, on that note, I think this podcast is going to come to an end. Good movie. Our 4th Netflix movie in a row.
Yeah.
Next week, what are we talking about? We haven't even discussed that yet.
Is Hoobie Halloween out?
Yeah.
It's coming. It's coming out. So we'll probably watch that at least. We might throw in something
At
else.
least.
We might do a little Adam Sandler marathon.
Ooh.
I am
Yeah.
so down for that. Please, if we're not doing a Sofia Coppola marathon, please give us the Adam Sandler. Give the fans what they want.
Give Arjun what he wants.
All I can say is this podcast is dead. Goodbye.
Long live this podcast.
Long live. Oh, awesome.
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking of ending things. It still kind of works for this.
Yeah.
All right, we did it, everybody.
Yay.
Yay. I'm so
Thanks, Eric, for coming on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yay.
How's class?
Yeah. How's being a student still?
Oh, I mean,